today to have with me a great honored guest, Fahiym Hanna, community organizer, recent candidate for county commissioner. How are you today?
Doing pretty good, man. It's good to be on here. And I'm want to say thank you for helping out with the campaign back when that was a thing. This is before COVID.
I usually don't do a lot of electoral stuff, but CPS model, trying to get people's needs met on a local level. That's what's up.
Thank you. Thank you. Is my camera still showing? Can you still see
Yeah,
me?
no, your video froze. Remember that gear symbol I showed you?
Yeah.
If you click that as gear symbol and change the resolution um, back and forth, it should reset the camera. While we're doing shout out to Red, we've already got a few people with us. Let me open up. I can see the YouTube comments, but I can't see the Facebook comments until I open that back up. While we're waiting for that video to come back up. If refreshing up, there you are. If refreshing it doesn't work, I mean, if changing the resolution doesn't work, you can always just refresh it again. All right, so we're gonna be talking with Fahiym Hanna, um, local local community, well, Greensboro, North Carolina, community organizer. All right, you're up.
Oh,
Can you,
thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the chance to talk about more about what I do in the community.
right on. All right, so for folks, I haven't had you on here before. Maybe you can get a little bit of a background about yourself.
So I moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, right after high school, and quickly joined into a lot of volunteer efforts and nonprofit work, and that was good in a lot of ways. It definitely helped me really understand how people who are saying the most good exercise that. And there's a nonprofit for everything, from giving away cats to giving out hams or whatever. And so, what all these have in common is that they are saying that they are out here doing the most good, trying to do the most good. And so I've been able to try out a few, and then, you know, there's a line that goes parallel between nonprofits and the left and actual like social justice work. And so it wasn't too far before I strayed into that category, and got exposed to lots of different social justice issues, and also became aware of other people who struggled with the same social justice issues that I struggled with. Uh, and that's how I became an organizer and activist in Greensboro. Uh, so with that, I some of the other projects I've worked on is I created a community center uh, in 2006, and that was great. What we did was offer half of the space to nonprofits to open up their offices and create that synergy, and the other half of the building we opened up to the community for free to be able to house their different events and meetings and social gatherings, and it was wildly popular. Um, Also, I've created a community garden in the last 7 years, and that's looked to teach people how to grow food. In the last 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how you count it, I've run for county commissioner, which was very different than the other things because it was related to electoral politics and getting stuff done that way. What I learned through my experience as a community organizer is that it's about resources. Like, nonprofits write grants to create resources. People gather together and community organizers and organizing groups to pool their resources together and do more. And my run for office was mostly around trying to acquire more resources for people.
Right on. Great. Were you talking about the Hive, the community center back in
Yeah,
2006?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Right
The Hive,
on.
right? Yeah, you remember the Hive, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really cool.
My users will know I did an internship with American Friends Service Committee, helping develop leaflets for counter recruitment.
Right
Because
on.
I did that in high school, and then that's where I met you. And that's great. You were very helpful, and um, just recently your guard. Wow, and a lot of the stuff you do. I think when I went up to help with your campaign recently, um, you had the garden there. You had the community together, cleaning up. Just amazing stuff. Respected in the community. Um, Doing great work. Maybe we can let's talk a little bit more about your correct. Let me see if I get this right. Correct priority society model. You
Yeah,
tell everyone a little bit about that.
sure, sure. So, as a platform for my campaign in 2020 and in 2018, I'd been working on a model maybe 4 or 5 years previously called the Correct Priority Society model. And this was a set of research data looking into what it would cost to be able to, like, what it would cost a city in labor to be able to provide people their basic needs. And we had that into 5 categories: food, water, shelter, access to infrastructure, access to education. These are things that people always need. And it was like, well, how much labor does it take to actually produce that much for a city as large as Greensboro? We're talking about somewhere 300,000 people. And that's what the Correct Priority Society model started out that way. And what we found out at the end of our data is that we could get people to work 7 to 14 hours a week in any of the sectors related to basic needs. Like I said, food, water, shelter, access to infrastructure, access to education. Those collective labor hours gets every worker exactly those amount of resources in the amount that they need it. So they always have access to food, always have access to housing, they always have access to the public infrastructure. Water is always plentiful and filtered. And so that became the basis for my run for both years.
So you were trying to establish this on a county level or a city level, or
Absolutely. So the scale is important too, because you could do. I've lived in a community, a collective housing collective before, and it was 5 or 6 of us, and we had pooled our money together to pay for our rent and bring in some food that we bought together, like rice and grains and milk and that kind of thing. And that was kind of what I'm talking about, but it was on a much smaller scale. It's people doing what they can, producing, and then distributing it out to each other equitably, right? So, and then the scale from there. So the scale has to get bigger because you could also create. There are communes and there are other collectives that have gathered together, some as large as 200, and they do similarly this thing. So, but the CPS model is on a larger scale, not just a city, but a county scale. If you could launch a program like the Correct Priority Society model on a county level, you could involve way more people, produce more, and continue to distribute it out to the whole county.
right on. So how many hours? How many hours did you say?
So it's 7 to 14 hours a week.
7 to 14 hours.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a truck driver. I got a trade. I work 70 plus hours a week.
Hmm.
And I'm still trying to get these student loans paid off. I know folks down in these factories make $200 a week, $250 a week. We got 3 people living in the same house, still can't even pay the bills. Like what? What?
It's
What is
crazy.
going on with that?
Crazy.
What is
Yeah.
going on with
No, we
that?
live in a wild, wild world right now. It's trifling, actually. But that's part of why the CPS model is necessary. The capitalism has created a lot of abundance in some places, but not in other places. And when we have to go out and pay for everything retail, it creates situations for lots of people where they can't afford to pay for everything retail. People can do better too by sometimes gathering together and paying for things on a wholesale scale, right?
Hmm.
But what we're talking about is on a production level. If people could just produce, take those hours, those minimal hours, and produce that, and then distribute it, we don't have to work as much. I mean, the problem with
Hmm.
like you're a truck driver, and a lot of the money that you make goes to the overhead and the profit of the company that you work for, right? And if we had to simplify it, is if your job was to catch a fish, you only need two fish to feed yourself and your family, right, a day, right?
Hmm.
But if you're fishing for a company, then they want you to catch 10 fish and you get to keep two fish for you and your family, right? So but what we're saying is that if people are just allowed to catch three fish, then you have fish for you and your family, and the third fish that goes out into the community for people who can't fish. So the model is absolutely simple, and the hours are minimal because the CPS model is not turning a profit. There isn't a boss to pay. There isn't a company to overhead. There isn't any marketing to do. It's simply people working, producing exactly what they need, and then distributing it to people.
Right on. Sounds simple and straightforward. Looks like we got a question from one of our viewers, Carla Hernandez. Have you tried to make your city or part of your city unincorporated? I believe she's trying to say, is there any way of doing this without having a position in government?
Well, it's back to what I said at the very beginning. It's all about resources. The county has a fair amount of resources, and the thing is that those resources on the county level already belong to us. We pay taxes into that. We hold up that structure. We hire and elect those people in office. And so, yes, you could theoretically gather up that much resources, but also realistically, you already have that much resources. You already have it in the form of government, and that's why I think government is the at least initially where the CPS model has landed. Um, but yeah, you could if one could create that much, you could gather that much resources, you could start on that level. But like I said, the CPS model was designed for a county level. You could scale it down and have a commune. You can scale it even further down and have a collective house or a set of collective houses. But it's the scale that's important. And when you can control that much labor on that big of a scale, you can bring down the minimum amount of time people work.
Right on. So let's get into, so you ran for county commissioner the last 2 years.
Yeah, so I ran twice, county commission in District 8 here in Guilford County. And this was a more proper election for 2020. And the 2018 was actually an election, um, was a special election.
Hmm.
The, the man who, Skip Austin, who had actually been in the seat for almost almost 3 decades, stepped down, and a younger person, gosh, what's his name? Ray Trapp. A younger man, Ray Trapp, actually um, got that seat, but didn't hold on to it for very long. Maybe 2 or 4 years, I think he held on to that seat, and then he stepped down um, for a better paid position at NET. And when he stepped down, they needed an interim person, and so they had the process to pick someone to hold that seat in the interim. And the man that had it before said, "Hey, I could do the job," and some people agreed.
Hmm.
So he got in there and ran the seat for finished out the term for 2 years, and then um, they needed to hold a special election to finish to elect him to continue to actually run a whole term, his whole term. Is that
Mm.
clear?
Yeah.
So so I also jumped into that special election and won 30% of that vote. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, for my first time running, it was a really good. And in the 2 years after that was an election for him to create his brand new term, not just fill in a term for someone else. And in that, let's see, I doubled my voting, doubled the amount of people who came out to vote for me, but it wasn't quite enough to win. I also garnered about 30% of the vote for that time too.
How many years is this individual been in that office?
Almost 3 decades. He's been in office
And
almost as long
and
as
has there been a change in the conditions in the community for
no,
the
no. So
better since he's been there?
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. There's a lot of people who would say that the material conditions in the last 30 years have not changed considerably since he's been in office. Um,
Did I think you shared a meme with me? Did he meet with Sheriff Opio and from Arizona, the anti-immigrant
no,
bigot?
he actually we have our own um, anti-immigrant bigots here in
Oh,
North
okay.
Carolina,
Uh huh.
and the picture I think you're thinking about is
Uh huh.
him standing next to Sheriff B.J. Barnes
Oh, okay. BJ Barr. My bad.
as
My
they
bad.
opened up the brand new jail here in Greensboro. Um, so that was one
Wow.
of his proudest moments. He actually talks about that quite often, him opening up that jail. And so you could just get a feel for where his priorities lie, and that he thinks that making money through locking people up is much better than um, providing people their basic needs so they don't have to become criminals.
Right on. Sounds like a revolutionary idea. um. So would you call like so that dude's been there 30 years, and then you're coming up? Would you call it insurgent campaign? Like
I would
your
say so.
ideas are radically different from like what's been there before. Trying.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely a way of doing things. There isn't a premise, there isn't any already um, handbook on how to run government the way I'm thinking about it. There isn't another model like the CPS model around, but all the potential is there. All of the authority is there in the county commissioners, all their resources and all their partnerships are there. It's really just about reorienting the resources that are already there. The problem is that we don't have people who are willing to do that.
Mm.
And because that's the problem, um, my campaign did come off as very radical. They said, "Whoa, we don't use those resources like that. That's we don't do that." But the idea was very popular with folks who don't normally vote. It was popular with folks who are small business owners and people who are struggling right now. Even before COVID, there were people who are falling through the cracks who said, "No, that sounds like a great idea," so people don't fall through the cracks. But I think the context of my campaign really can be summed up with the recent events happening with Trump being elected to office. The Democrats then created um, opportunities and a push to get more radical left folks into the Democratic Party. And they did that by offering us lots of great ideas like universal basic health. They pushed candidates like AOC and Bernie Sanders and lots of folks locally as well. Cesar Brockman comes to mind. Um, and so what was happening is that the Democratic Party was presenting themselves as willing to be way more radical than they had been in the last 30 years, so more even. And folks really took that. People said, "Whoa, well, I'll give this a look." Young folks like me started to go to meetings, started to become more more involved in our local Democratic Party. Um, but the problem is that we we more radical Democrats started to become an unwelcomed house guest in that they were willing to hear us out, but they weren't really willing to change. They were willing to entertain our ideas, but they weren't ready to make it part of their platform. And so 2018 brought a wave of progressive Democrats into the election spaces, and that I guess was a bit of an insurgency, but it was controlled because a lot of the Democratic Party had encouraged those folks to get into politics. What they didn't do is they did not support and gather around those people. I guess you could easily describe it as a betrayal that the Democratic Party then, once seeing they had maybe enough votes to outvote Trump the next come around this November, have now started to turn on the progressive left that they have been welcoming in for the last 2 to 4 years. And so I think my campaign fits somewhere into that category. There were lots of folks who were in support of my run, liked my platform, um, but didn't do enough to get me elected. So, for instance, there were quite a few PACs locally who knew who I was, knew the work I had done in the past before even running for office, and still they chose the establishment.
Hmm. Wow. That's not, man. I feel betrayed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, people are hungry. People, are suffering these jobs and got health insurance, and then they promise us stuff, and then boom. I mean, how do you feel about that? Like,
Oh, yeah. I think that sums it up. It definitely is a betrayal. You had all these folks coming in and thinking. I just remember the hype around Bernie Sanders. We felt like we were like this close to getting universal basic health care. Um, but yeah, I mean, they're hardly even talking about it now. Hardly even talking about it now. Biden, who is the Democratic presidential nominee, has changed his platform since he has run. We had a whole slew of new faces, very diverse candidates running for presidency. Everybody from Bernie Sanders to Yang to Elizabeth Warren and stuff. And so it's weird to me that Biden is who we're stuck with, and that to me is just on the bigger scale of choosing the establishment over something different.
but there is a woman of color as vice president. You made as the candidate. You made an interesting response
Mhm.
on Facebook about that, about her being picked. Can you tell us a little bit about your response to Kamala Harris being chosen as the vice president?
Oh, I think it could have been. I think he could have picked someone who, one, could bring more of the base together. Kamala Harris and Biden have very similar stances on lots of things. It would have been more fruitful, I think, to find someone who he could disagree with a little bit, somebody who had some other positions that voters might actually be into. But he didn't. He picked someone who was pretty well in line with already his platform. And so I think one, that was a wasted effort in that case. Now the other case is Kamala Harris herself is not a very good pick as far as I'm concerned. Um, she represents a lot. She has in the past gone along with the establishment in her own when she's every time has chosen to fund the war and add more military spending. Um, every time there's a slightly even controversial issue such as legalizing sex workers, she's always voted against it. Um, things around abortion, she's always against. and things around. Anytime there's a chance to encourage and help out the prison industrial system, she's been their best advocate. And because of that, I think she's a terrible pick. But I also think Biden is a terrible pick as well. I more than likely will stick with the party and vote for them come November. But I ain't too happy about it.
Right on. That's. Oh, I mean, you got crime Bill Biden and brutal, vicious prosecutor.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, and I think it's refreshing to hear folks um, like yourself who have more of a that recognize like a multi tendency and want to work with folks that they might not be voting for the same people, but we want the same stuff. Um, like I back like I would disagree. Like I support voting for the Green Party because I mean the Green Party is pushed. Like the Green New Deal came out of the Green Party. I think both of those, like somebody voting for Green and pushing them, and then someone voting to prevent, both. I mean, both of those are rational, positive things, and we're both
Yeah.
acting out of it for the
Absolutely.
community. So I mean, it's refreshing to not have this. I don't know. Like if I tell that to some of these folks, they have nothing but praise
Hmm.
for Biden or Harris, and if I say anything against
Yeah.
it, I'm an evil Trump supporter. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely get some of that venom coming out of the
yeah.
Democratic Party. I think that politics have become a sporting event for lots of folks, and they
Mm.
want to see their side win. But when you have politics like that, the people lose every time. The Democratic Party has done very little for folks in since I've been in politics, since I've been able to vote. And what I think my reason for continuing to vote with the Democratic Party is because, at least locally here, I'm pushing for a
Mm.
lot of accountability among the Democratic Party. So, yeah, I'm going
That's
along
good.
and voting for Biden, but also I'm not just voting. I'm getting out here and trying to hold the Democratic Party accountable. And I
Right
think
on.
that anybody who disagrees with Biden and Kamala and are Democrats should go ahead and vote for them, and also try to hold them accountable the best they can. That is absolutely the next step. But folks who are also just like not really interested in even trying to fish upstream that bureaucracy, yeah, a third party is a good idea, especially the Green Party. Their ideas are wildly radical in comparison to um, what the Democratic platform is. And I have to say that the Democratic platform itself has changed over the beginning, since the beginning of this whole bid for presidency has changed and has become more progressive. But when you look at the folks who are promising you this, and their history doesn't speak to them ever standing up for those issues, then you have to know that it's a lie. It's like they're not really going to do that. So their platform looks good, but the Green Party's platform also looks good, but they have a history of every time standing up and speaking on those issues.
Right on. So maybe we could take it back to earth a little bit. Um, so maybe you could tell us a little more about your community garden. I know it's been a little bit weird with COVID, and it's the fall, but like, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about some of your community work and community organizing?
Yeah, so for COVID, we're still growing. The garden is centered around teaching people how to grow food. So we're less production based, but we have been producing just a little bit more to be able to give away. But it's still centered around teaching, and we've been doing a lot of social distancing and being able to have masks. And so, we have less people. We're only using, let's see, maybe 2/8 of the land, where normally we could get up to 6/8 of the land. Um, so we have seen a decrease in participation But it's nice to continue teaching people how to grow food. That really is important, especially in these times now. I know that there has been a boom in people creating community gardens, and I hope that my community garden continues to be a place where people who may not just be able to just read it right out of a book or look it up online and feel confident could come and touch the dirt themselves and be with any of my directors or me to actually learn how to do it on a hands-on experience. And so that's, I mean, that really speaks to how not only I approach gardening, but I also approach politics that way too. This is a really hands-on experience, and there's a lot of misinformation about how politics actually works. So not only was my campaign out to go get votes, it also had a huge component for teaching people exactly what and where we are in the process. People aren't sure, everything from like precincts and voting locations to when it's okay to vote is things that we have slowed down the campaign to try to teach people because a more informed democracy is better.
Right on. Like when I was out there with you, it didn't feel like I haven't had a lot of campaign experience, but I mean I remember you go to people and you would tell them about the CPS model, and you say, look at this website, and you're like, it wasn't immediate like vote for me, you must vote for me or you will die. Like I didn't I didn't get that. You're like here's the CPS model, look it up, and I'm here if you want to talk about it. I'm your neighbor. Like that was that's a different approach.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. When I approached the campaign, we really wanted to put the information out first. We wanted the platform to supersede me. Um, and so it was really important that all the campaign staff and the volunteer staff understood what the CPS model was. And there's plenty of more information about the CPS model at fahiymhanna.com. You just go down to the tab that says CPS model, and you can find some of our data. You can find out how it works and what we plan to do as far as like rolling it out. We put tons of information about the CPS model in very concise, easy to understand language. And we then took that information and boiled it down even more to pamphlets and 3 or 4 line and 2 minute speeches, all to get people to understand what it is that we want to do first. Like as soon as I want people to know that I'm not just going in there as a pretty face. I'm not just going in there because I don't like the former county commissioner. I'm going in there because I want to implement a plan that looks to create care for people. And that's, I mean, if the government is not caring for people, then we don't need a government. Like,
Wasn't that your slogan? Care.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I don't remember. What was the slogan?
yeah. Creating a county of care was the slogan.
Creating a county of care. Right
Creating
on.
a county of care.
Looks like we got another question from our audience. Shout out Arctic Angel, friend of the show, and he says, "What are we talking about?" So maybe just a quick, just rundown again. What is the CPS model?
Yeah. Okay. So CPS model is short for Correct Priority Society Model. And what it is a model that proposes that on the county level, people can work 7 to 14 hours a week in any of the sectors related to basic needs: food, water, shelter, access to infrastructure, access to education. In exchange for that work, you get back in the amount that you needed your food, your water, your shelter, your access to infrastructure, your access to education. And with that, operating on the county level, people can always have their basic needs provided for through their own labor. And then whatever time, with the rest of their time, if they want to work, if they don't want to work, it's their choice. And they could take that money as profit for their household to do whatever it is that they actually want with their lives. So that's what we're talking about. And I ran the CPS model as my major platform for my electoral campaign in 2020. The office I ran for was County Commissioner in District 8 here in Guilford County, North Carolina.
All right. So what's Arctic Angel says? Nice idea. Right on. So maybe we can dream for a bit, or just talk about something positive. So if we're not, so if we only got to work 10, 15, well, you said 15 hours, like 15 hours.
Yeah, 7 to
Uh,
14. Yep.
all right. So 15 is 7 to 14, 15. Well, oh,
Hmm.
you said 7 to 14, even less. Wow. 7 to 14. Well,
Yeah.
let's say 14.
Yes,
So
sir.
what are we, what are, so if we work 14 hours, all our needs are met. Like, what are we supposed to do with the rest of our time?
You know what? If I had a couple of people ask me, well, what are people going to do? They ask me more so about what are other people going to do at that time. If you give them that much
uh,
time, what are they going to do? Like what else? Like if they're not working 40 hours a week, what are they going to do with their time? And the answer
yeah.
to that is they could do whatever they want. They could do what they want. So one of the things that is outlined as a principle for the correct priority society model, and like I said, all this is on the website at fahimhanna.com. Just go down to the CPS model and you can find that. But one of the principles of the CPS model is this idea of individual freedom, right? And freedom is a word that gets thrown a lot in America all the time. We see it on slogans, we see it on both poster boards, but what is it? What does it mean to be individually free? And the CPS model proposes that freedom is three um, it's three components to having your individual freedom. And one, it's your time of day. The time you spend from when you wake up to when you go to sleep belongs to you. And you spend some of that time on someone else's agenda, whether it's your family, whether it's the workplace, whether it's the church, well, whoever, wherever you want to spend your time. But that should, at the very beginning, belong to you. And then you get to decide what you do at that time, right? The second really important tenet for the CPS model is agency. This is the idea that you have all these thoughts and feelings and ideas that come after your basic needs are met. If you're hungry, you're going to be thinking about your hunger. If the CPS model can always have sustainable, equitable food to you, then you don't need to think about your hunger anymore. That means that's like your agency to think about other things is there. And and the third tenet is a little harder to understand in America because we don't really talk about this a lot, but it's consent. Consent is two prongs. One, your ability to understand what you're saying yes and no to, and two, to be able to say yes and no without consequence or negative consequence rather. So those three things are what we're trying to deliver to people. We're trying to deliver people back their own time, their agency, and their ability to consent to the way they want to be in the world. You know, like just as you said earlier in the program, you're working 40 plus hours trucking. You might have wanted to consent
70.
to 70 plus hours 70 plus hours truck driving, right? And so we might think like in the world, you're an industrious man, you want to work. You might want to work 10, 15 hours a week, right? But because we live in a society that doesn't care about your consent, they push you to do more work so you can get just enough money to be able to maintain your lifestyle. And they push that goalpost back every couple of months, every 6 months or so, you're having to squeeze out another hour or half an hour. And then suddenly you're realizing that like the marathon is requiring you to work 70 plus hours to get the same amount of money to meet your basic needs and your family's wants. And that's not consensual. You didn't, if someone would have come to you today and said, hey, I got a 70-hour job for you, you would have been like, hell no. It's only because they've gradually put that pressure on you without your consent that you're in a position now that you're working so much. And it's not something you would have agreed to from the very beginning. And that happens across the board.
Well, I guess I could do a lot more interviews like this and a lot more lives. I guess other people would be interested in music or art.
Absolutely.
Seems like I don't know. It's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world. It has to start. It has to start somewhere. Like that's. I think
Yeah.
revolution really is like. I mean, oftentimes, um, people when imagining the revolution, they think about like, and this is partly thanks to Hollywood and movies and media and that kind of thing, like Hunger Games and that kind of thing. But they imagine people burnt out in a burnt out building, holding a gun and being like, "I'm defending freedom," and we're living off of rats and this is that kind of thing. But at least we're free. And to me, that vision of freedom could never work. It could never work. One, to go after a freedom that lowers your quality of life is a misnomer. It only helps the establishment to dream of a revolution that actually lowers your quality of life. So in thinking about like we can only do better from here, we are sustaining a lot of us. Even in COVID times, most of us are getting what we need and what we want. Um, Even if it's working 70 hours a week, we're still maintaining, we're still creating a lifestyle for our friends and families together. Um, so that's the base. We need to start from there and say, look, I insist on having more time with my family, more time with my friends. I insist that my passions should come first. That's the revolution that I want to be propagating. Is that the CPS model rearranges what we already have here to give people more of the three tenets that we talked about: consent, agency, and time. But that's just the beginning. It can create more than that. We can add more access to things. Right now, like there was this come up a lot on the campaign. I would list out food, water, shelter, access to infrastructure, access to education, and people would say, well, what about Wi-Fi? That's the basic need. And you know what? Maybe they're not wrong. Maybe they're not wrong. Maybe we do live in a society where Wi-Fi is a basic need. And the answer that the CPS model has for that is, yeah, let's add that on. Let's figure out what it costs and in the form of human labor to maintain towers, to create new antennas, to deliver Wi-Fi to people. And we might be able to tack on another 2 hours for everybody's quota. So 7 to 14 hours becomes 7 to 16 hours. And we have added a whole nother infrastructure, a whole nother um, basic need to the list of things that we got. And so like the sky's the limit. Yeah, we could totally add other things that people find necessity to the CPS model. But first we have to at the very least start off with what everybody needs. And that's
Right on. That's a good plan. Good strategy, realistic, and it sounds like it's bringing us forward to a better life, better
yeah,
standard of
yeah, that's yeah.
improving our
We
society.
gotta move up from there, yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, also, I mean, it improves the democracy too. If people have
right
more
on.
time and agency, like people will participate. People will, our democracy is, the model is shaky, but if people can participate, then we can repair and improve on it as we are participating in the democracy. But as it stands now, we're just struggling to get people to participate. We're just like, well, just fuck it, just get out here and vote, maybe. But it's more than voting. We need to get people participating and like really being able to research the candidates and get into these caucuses and be part of their precinct chairs and all of the things that comes with that.
Well, so I guess if we weren't um, if we didn't have if we weren't working these 40, 60, 70 hour a week jobs and barely had enough time just to spend with our families, and
Mm-hmm.
we could get out there and talk to our neighbors and build political organizations and build
That's right.
volunteer organizations and maybe even just dream a bit, just think about.
Yeah,
just
have
have
that
time.
agency, right? To dream a little bit, be able to dream something other than like not having the foot on our neck.
Yeah. We've been going about 45 minutes or so. Is there anything else you wanna put out there, talk about?
I think right now during these kind of COVID times, I mean we're dealing with really rough times, and I think that what we need is to demand that our elected officials get to work on some of this stuff because that's why we have elected them according to the democracy that we have. And if they cannot find uh, anything other than excuses for us, then we have to get these folks out of office. And necessarily, we don't have to always wait for the next election cycle. There are other processes that we can use. We can, um, we can demand that they step down. We can create petitions that recall them. There isn't any reason that we need to wait. We need to be pushing on these elected officials right now. They need to be doing everything they can to help us, or they need to get out of those seats. And one of the CPS model is just one of many realistic policies that could be implemented right now, tomorrow, if the people in charge felt like doing that. Um, that could help folks. So we need not just the CPS model, but we need lots of new ideas and models. I hope that everybody gets the chance to go out to the website and read more about the CPS model. Support me on, Patreon, and join me on Facebook, or join and subscribe to your YouTube channel to get more information. But participate. Just get out here and participate. Really find other folks who believe what you believe, because that's everything starts with that. Everything starts with going out and finding people who believe what you believe, and uh, that's how we start to really change the world.
Right on. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you.